Today, we're going to be going over the Jose Ferrer and Harry Ford trade aftermath. Welcome to the Dom Skeen channel, your one-stop shop for the Mariners storylines on Seattle's minds. And I've got my Seahawks stuff on today because the Seahawks blew out the Atlanta Falcons. Go and check out SeahawksWired.usatoday.com. Check out my Studs and Duds column if you want to learn about what happened during the game. Maybe if you didn't watch, or if you did, see some stuff you might not have seen during the game. With that being said, going to get into the Jose Ferrer and Harry Ford trade aftermath. Examine Jose Ferrer's fit with the Mariners. And why exactly I think the Mariners did this is that he's the perfect complement to Gabe Speier. The Mariners also need a right-handed hitter and a backup catcher bad after trading Harry Ford. I'm going to throw out some names, talk about the fit of one who has been reported already. For getting into this thing, going to get a little thumbnail right here. Anyway, so 109 days till opening day. Jose Ferrer and Harry Ford trade aftermath. Like I said, examine Jose Ferrer's fit, all this stuff. Anyway, Jose Ferrer and Gabe Speier's baseball savant pages. Just look at these. They're direct complements to one another. So I'm going to put these up right here for you guys so you can take a look. These movement profiles I want to get into a little bit more on this channel. Lance Brozdowski, if you watch him, he gets into these a lot. Those are something extremely useful for analyzing the game, but they're a little bit hard to look at. Anyway, we're not going to do that too much today, but keep your eye on that in the near future. Then Gabe Speier here. So the main thing I want you to see, we're not going to look at these too long, is that the areas that Ferrer is good, Speier might not be as good, and the areas that Speier is good, Ferrer might not be as good. I'm actually going to go ahead and see if I can make these guys a little smaller. All right. Very technically basic today, but anyway, you look at those. The main thing to look at is, so xERA, Speier's at 98, Jose Ferrer only at 69th percentile in that, but no worries, Speier's in the top 2%. Expected batting average, Speier's at 97th percentile, whereas Ferrer is only at the 27th percentile. He lets him put a lot of balls in play. But fastball velo, Speier's only at 59th percentile. You got Ferrer all the way up at 94th. So then average exit velocity, this is one of the weaker ones. Ferrer's at 54th percentile on average exit velocity. Speier is only at 38. They both give up pretty hard contact. But Ferrer being at 54th percentile when throwing one pitch 70%, really 71% of the time, in the middle of the zone, because if you look at the heat map for his sinker, he's basically throwing a sinker in the middle of the zone all the time and still getting outs, which is extremely impressive. So I think the Mariners are going to tweak that a little bit, which I'm going to get into in just a second. Chase rate, Speier is at 98th percentile, offsetting Ferrer's at 48th percentile. Basically, no matter which one of these metrics you want to use in any given situation, you have a guy who's extremely, extremely elite at it. Then K percentile, Speier at 96th percentile. Then walk rate, both Ferrer's at 95th percentile, Speier's at 96th percentile. This is one of the things that both of them do extremely well. Barrel rate, Ferrer prevents barrels. He's 93rd percentile right there. Whereas Speier, he's only at the 39th percentile. He does give up a lot of barrels. So when you want a guy not to barrel the ball up, you go with Ferrer. Hard hit rate is the one that neither has been great at so far. Ferrer lets a lot of grounders. He gets a lot of ground balls, but they're screamers a lot of the time, especially in today's MLB. Think Julio, right? When he gets the ball on the ground, it's usually 110 plus exit velocity. Then, so neither of them are in 50th percentile there, but that's the only thing of that, the only metric where that's the case. Ground ball rate, this is where Jose Ferrer shines, all the way up at 99th percentile. And then extension, you can kind of cross off. Neither of these guys get big extension, but that's not the Mariners style anyway. The Mariners like low arm slots. They don't like over-the-top arm slots. So obviously extension is not something that you need to look at too much. Left-on-left splits. Ferrer fares better as the anti-Carpenter device. And I'm sorry I don't have your name right here, but I had a commenter yesterday who kind of coined this term. So we're going to start using this term for I want to make sure I give credit to who it was. It was Aaron Streitenberger. Shout out to Aaron Streitenberger. He termed Ferrer the anti-Carpenter device, which I was talking about yesterday. Kind of getting the left, the left-on-left specialist is going to be Jose Ferrer this season, it looks like. Speier struggled a little bit as a left-on-left guy, but I think the Mariners look at Speier as somebody who can pitch to righties as well, whereas Ferrer is going to be kind of the new contract killer. But I still like Speier's nickname as the contract killer. That feels right for him as a mercenary with, just the way he looks, the hair and the beard and the tattoos. So we're going to term Ferrer the anti-Carpenter device. When we're going up against, an extremely tough lefty hitter, we need to get that one guy out. Kind of the similar principle as the contract killer, Gabe Speier, how we kind of created that nickname. But Ferrer is going to be the anti-Carpenter device. And now I want to go over some clear discrepancies because Jose Ferrer, obviously, 4.48 ERA. Nobody's too excited about a guy with, nobody, when you just look at ERA, you see a guy with a 4.48 who's a reliever. You're not going to say that that's obviously a good ERA. But one thing we know as baseball fans in 2025 is that ERA, and I see some people fighting in the comments, so shout out to y'all, who's using ERA in 2025, am I right? Like, it's just funny to see people going with ERA and, that alone. And somebody, was like, yeah, garbage trade, take a top prospect for a 4+ ERA reliever, right? And I asked, then why do you think they did it? Do you think that they were just looking at ERA and said, yeah, we just want to make a bad trade? No, they're looking at a whole lot of other stuff. And getting into it right, a 3.03 FIP, fielding independent pitching. So when you're not looking at the fielding, which one of my friends pointed this out to me, a great point is that the Nationals did not have a good infield defense last year. When with Ferrer, now that you've got good infield defense behind him, Naylor, you see the way he stretches for ground balls. Whoever we put at second, whether it's Cole Young, when you got Leo Rivas coming in, he's going to be excellent, right? But Cole Young should be taking the majority of those innings at second base. He's a pretty sound defensive player. He was a shortstop moving to second base. He's, he hasn't had too much time under his belt, but I expect Cole Young to be a good defender. He's smooth. When I watch Cole Young, he's a good defender. Then, J.P. Crawford, we know how good he is. And y'all know how I feel about Ben Williamson. He's my pick to win the American League third base Gold Glove this year. So, I think you've got a great infield defense behind Ferrer. You've got a great environment as well, which when you look at the 285 Sierra is, I always forget the acronym, but basically what it does is it takes a skill interactive ERA, which basically what it does is it takes into account whether it was like a ground ball or a fly ball, and since Ferrer gets so many ground balls, his Sierra is amazing. The other thing that it does is it takes into account park factors. So with park factors, Ferrer got kind of hosed when it comes to park factors because he had this 4.48 ERA, but you take that out of there, right? 285 Sierra. So if you put him in this ballpark, right, there's a very good chance, his expected stats are just absolute money. 1.4 WAR last year, still in spite of, a 4.48 ERA. That if you're looking at basic stuff like ERA, you're probably looking at basic stuff like WAR too, right? Which a 1.4 with a 4.4 WAR with a 4.48 ERA shows you that there's some value there for sure. Then 62.6% ground ball rate. Just got to emphasize that's 99th percentile. That's absolutely insane. And moving on, right? This is just something I noticed when looking at Fangraphs. So the sinker range for Ferrer, pretty big. You got 93.8 is his minimum, 100.7 is his maximum, 97.7 is the velocity you'll see get thrown out there for him, and which is not bad. But the slider range I really want to look at because he's got an 89.7 mile an hour average slider, which is incredibly fast. The minimum was way down at 84.4, but his maximum slider was up at 93.7, and I'm like, that's popping off the radar gun, right? So I wanted to look, and I said, so he's got the 19th fastest max slider in baseball all of last year. I think it was 638, pitchers that threw a slider in Major League Baseball. than the 23rd fastest average slider velocity in baseball overall, which tells me, you look at all the best Mariners relievers, what do they have in common? They come here as flamethrowers, they get turned into slider guys. Even you see Andres Munoz using a slider 90% of the time down the stretch. The Mariners just got another one, man. I mean, you look at this, you got, so here's courtesy of Fangraphs right here. And you look at this list, right? You got Jacob Misiorowski's at the top, obviously. Absolute freak with a 98.5 max velocity slider. You look at a lot of these names, Chase Petty, Braxton Ashcraft, whatever. You see some good ones, though. Jacob deGrom, Chris Sale, right? You even see some good relievers like Justin Martinez, Joe Boyle, a guy who we thought was going to break out on the Rays as a starter. He didn't really end up doing that. But I think there still might be some hope there. A lot of pitching experts have cooled on him, though. He is a kind of a polarized one in the pitching community. But Scooble, obviously, in there. Sandy Alcantara, a guy who's had success in the past. Seth Halverson, Edwin Diaz, Shane Smith, Ryan Helsley, Dan Altavilla, former Mariner. Jose Soriano, right? Max Meyer. Funny enough, Carlos Vargas down there, the only Mariner on this list. But you look at this, right? You've got a really, really high velocity slider. And if the Mariners can just figure out what to do with that thing, you've got a big hunk of metal, right? And can you turn that thing into a sword? Can you sharpen that into a sword, right? Anyway, and in the words of the great Mike Leach, shout out to Cougar football. Been a rough weekend for Cougar football. Swing your sword. Here's to hoping that the next Washington State coach at least stays here for several years and does well. Anyway, now looking at the 23rd fastest slider in baseball overall when you look at average exit or average velocity. So look down here, right? You see the names above him again. Misiorowski, Varland, a reliever pitching all the way down the stretch in the ALCS against us and the World Series. Justin Martinez, popular reliever who was a closer for a bit before getting injured. Will Kleins is somebody who Mariners fans learned all too well how good he could be. Major League Baseball fans, learned all too well how good he could be in the 18-inning game. Definitely the game of the year. Somebody the Mariners let go of this year. But you see why the Mariners might have had him in the first place, right? We've got a type. We like these big-time sliders. Hunter Brown, Cy Young finalist. Jacob deGrom. Some of these names, like Raldy Munoz, haven't heard of him. But like Riley O'Brien on the Cardinals, another really good pitcher. Grant Taylor, somebody who I think is going to be great for the White Sox for years to come. Probably in a closer role, but could even step into a starter role. Scooble, So you see the names on this list, and more, it's like, if you can throw a really, really hard slider, there's usually something there. And the Mariners are so good at getting guys who throw great fastballs to throw great sliders. I think there's really something there with Ferrer. If you can get him to throw this thing more than it's around 25% of the time, you've got a real weapon on your hands. It sees 22% of the time, I think it is, that he threw slider. Or a little under 22, but yeah. Anyway, so with the catcher, right, we need, with trading Harry Ford, we need a catcher. Moving off of Jose Ferrer, who I'll cover more throughout this offseason as I do a little more research and stuff. But I think the Mariners got a really good one on their hands. The fastball is absolute money. He complements Speier extremely well. And, looking at those Savant pages, and there's clear discrepancies that are going to be fixed by a good defense behind him and a good ballpark that he is in. He factors that in as that left-on-left device, the anti-Carpenter device, really well. And when you look at these velocities, right, the sinker has some pretty good velocity, obviously, a pretty big range there, so he could be even more. Considering he's only 25, he's probably not completely in his prime physically yet, going to be entering it pretty soon. But then that slider, nearly 10 miles an hour velocity range on that thing. Tells me that there's something to be unlocked there that the Nationals just haven't yet, and I think the Mariners absolutely will. After seeing what they've done, with the top relievers in the bullpen being Andres Munoz, Matt Brash. Anyway, moving on to the catcher situation. Mariners need a backup catcher after trading Harry Ford, and there was reports already that the Mariners are looking at bringing back Mitch Garver. So, going to go through the quick case for and the case against. The case for saying, there's reports already saying a reunion is possible. So clearly they like it enough where, they were willing to make this move, and they immediately call Garver up and say, hey, let's talk. He works well behind Cal. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Cal did so well with Garver as his backup. There might be something there with Garver being the guy who steps in where things kind of stay in sync. He's a good pinch hitter versus lefties, a 107 WRC plus versus lefties. We need somebody who can hit lefties very well, as we're a pretty lefty-heavy lineup and off the bench. And he's not likely to have much of an open market, projected 1 for $5 million. And he's much more value than before for the Mariners, where we had him for $12 million. If you can convince him down to $3 million, I think this is a pretty clear cut. Do it. Then the familiarity and the chemistry. We're not in the clubhouse. We don't know what's going on in the building, but there's a lot of familiarity there. So you're working with a guy who you have already worked with, and so continuing to work with him should be something that works out pretty well. And then the chemistry. He seemed like a guy who, again, we're not in the clubhouse, but seems like a guy who fits well with this team. There's a reason he was here in the first place, and he was here for 2 years regardless. So he developed some sort of chemistry. He definitely wasn't somebody who didn't gel with the team in the lights of a Gene Segura or a Jesse Winker. The case against, he wasn't great here in 2024. Really had a pretty poor year. He's bad versus righties, 63 WRC plus, which means when you are putting him in for Cal, he's not going to be, he's not a typical everyday hitter. So when you do have to rest Cal versus a righty, he's going to go in there and not be he's not going to be quite as, or Cal needs day to DH. You want to rest Cal's knees and legs a little bit. You want to do it against lefties because versus righties, he's just not going to be as good of a hitter. And that's where, he's really a platoon bat at a position that you kind of need in certain spots that aren't based on the offensive output. And it forces a below average hitter into the lineup sometimes. Then defensively mid, -4 fielding run value. He did have, he's barely had any years of great defense, but he did have a couple years of okay defense. He had he's at since 2017, 9 years in the majors. In 2017 he only played 50 innings, but 9 years in the majors. Only 3 of those, he wasn't negative on fielding run value. But 2 of those, just a -1. 1 of those just a -2. 2018, he was a -14 behind the plate. That's also, he caught 669 innings for Minnesota. So definitely not the usage that we're going to have him in. But then, -2, -1, +2 fielding run value in 2021 with Minnesota, kind of his prime. Then he put up zeros in both 2022 and 2023, just an average catcher. So off the bench, if you can have an average catcher, there's a chance that you'd like to bring in a defensive whiz behind Cal. But, Garver has the familiarity. You don't expect him to be too bad. And then with us, the last 2 years, 2024 and 25, -3 and -4 fielding run value. So looks like he might be on the downturn, might not be as good as as good as you want defensively in your backup catcher. You probably like a defensive wizard, but it is what it is. He's got some familiarity now, so can't be the worst. And he is 34, so he should be on the decline a bit. He's defensively mid overall, but not defensively awful. Then just a list of names of who we could be looking at more in the next week, depending on if we wrap up Garver in the winter meetings, or these are a whole lot of other free agent catchers that we can look at. Elias Diaz won the All-Star Game MVP here. When the All-Star Game was here, he was the MVP. That's like the main thing to say about him. Other than that, kind of bounced around the league a little bit, in his 30s now. Luke Maile, Christian Vasquez, the former Red Sox catcher. Luke Maile, obviously the former Cleveland catcher. Andrew Kinsner came up with the Cardinals organization. He's a guy we could look at. Gary Sanchez, big bat, not much defense there. Austin Barnes, a guy who has experience with a great team in the Dodgers, going far into the postseason and stuff, and a very good defensive catcher, who I think Clayton Kershaw loved getting caught by Austin Barnes. So there could be something there if you were looking for a defensive whiz. Jorge Alfaro, he's another name. Jonah Heim, the switch hitter, Mariner killer with Texas, and a part of their 2023 World Championship team, World Series team. Jacob Stallings, and former Mariner Tom Murphy, who he's also in his 30s, but still kicking it around in the big leagues. So maybe there's a reunion there. Little less likely than Garver for sure, but they liked him. The organization liked him before. Maybe they go ahead and bring him back. He is extremely injury prone though. Going to go into these names a little more in detail depending on what happens the next week. And a no is not because I don't want him. I just don't see how it's realistic. Is Luis Torrens, which I've seen people tweeting out, let's go get this guy back as our backup catcher. Well, the problem is the Mets have him on a less than $3 million deal, and he's their backup. So they won't just give him away, and be in the same position as us looking for a backup catcher, where they would have to pay more for assumingly less value than Luis Torrens. And we'd have to give up value for him. So we're not going to give up a ton of value for him. And that's pretty much why we're not going to do it. It just doesn't really make sense. The Mets won't part with their backup catcher just to give us one, because we both, need a backup catcher. Well, we'd have to give them something probably more valuable to make that happen. Just doesn't make sense. Two more just extra things wanted to mention. Fangraphs now projects Samad Taylor on the opening day roster over Masterboni, which does give us another right-handed hitter. So that's good. But again, that's with that projection has, I forget who it is, it has some whoever the next man up is as our backup catcher. And then another thing I wanted to mention is just a dream. Pete Alonso, as far as right-handed hitters, you go look at that Baseball Savant page, it is all red. If the market isn't there, could he come here for a shorter-term deal? It really isn't realistic at all, not only because, the market is going to be there. He's going to get a lot of money, which the Mariners are not likely to pay at all. But Scott Boras, the agent, super agent, would never sit with the Mariners. Him and Bregman, that's the reason we couldn't get Bregman last year, part of it. He runs up the money for his players. He is an extremely player-sided agent, as he should be. He's doing the best thing for the players, not for the teams. And that's what his job is. So he's just extremely good at his job. And the Mariners just know the Mariners are a little too smart to get into negotiations with him and then pay, $40 million a year for Alex Bregman usually. It is what it is. And I've also seen, just a little bit of chatter about, the Mariners bringing it in like an Alex Bregman this year. There was a lot of it last year, a little more. It's all just a pipe dream. Remember, for Cal Raleigh to get his extension done at the beginning of this season, it took him firing Scott Boras as his agent. So, Pete Alonso, you want to talk about perfect fit as right-handed hitter? He would have to DH, obviously. But you look at this lineup with Pete Alonso in it, gosh, it really fixes our need for a righty. Could he come over here for a shorter term deal? The answer is really no. Boras would not even sit with us to talk about it. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention. I saw from one prospect, kind of prospect-based person, I think it was the head of Baseball America, tweeted this out, that Luke Stevenson, by some metrics, or by some people's estimation, is an even better prospect than Harry Ford. He was just drafted last year, so they haven't had tons of time to develop him or anything. But if that's the case, that makes a lot of sense why the Mariners would have traded Harry Ford as well, with the big log jam and everything. but also they were saying that Luke Stevenson might be the most underrated prospect in the organization. So, I mean, knowing that, it's like, ooh, we might have to call it the top 10 and not just the top 9, because Luke Stevenson, clearly there's some buzz around him. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. Comment question for the day. Just comment whatever you want, boost the algorithm. Let me know your thoughts on Jose Ferrer, how he's going to do with the Mariners, anything a little deeper, anything you want to say about the trade, who you think we should get as a backup catcher, and what our next move should be. Winter meetings start tomorrow. Going to try to do a winter meetings preview and cover any moves we have throughout the week. Any breaking news we have. This will be your first place that you get a video on the YouTube about the Mariners. Thank you for listening to the Domsky Channel, your one-stop shop for the Mariners storylines on Seattle's minds. I will see you guys tomorrow. Go M's.